Tommy Shelby, Justice, Work, and the Ghetto Poor. The ghetto poor refuse to conform to the society that the U.S. has created. They take the stance of passive resistance to the social norms. Blacks would not be stuck in ghettos if it weren't for the injustices of the past and the debts owed to them. Dave Infante, there are almost no black people brewing craft beers. Here's why. Craft beer is typically a white business. Blacks dislike the culture of craft beer the most. Blacks have applied many times to breweries everywhere, but the workplace discrimination still hinders their abilities to obtain jobs in even the smallest of areas. Infante continued, craft beer is closely tied to an experience that a lot of people of color don't want to be a part of or don't feel welcome engaging with. The overall American beer industry has always been white. Post-Prohibition beer brewing became a large corporation, hurting minorities who could have owned breweries. Shelby versus Infante. These two articles are similar in that they both elaborate on how blacks are left out of social normities in the U.S., either by choice or by history. Workplace discrimination and unfair opportunities keep blacks out of certain fields. Whites do not even have to take action anymore to prevent blacks from integrating. The blacks just understand and conform with the ideas and the ways that they have always known. Freud, Colored Property and White Backlash. Freud explained how racism is fueled by economics. Ownership, including and especially business ownership, are considered white privileges. Whites do anything they can to prevent blacks from tainting their world and their traditions. Freud continued, race and class interact to undermine the social and economic abilities and well-being of black Americans. The justification for this intolerance is that this has been the political way as far back as people can remember, and that they were conditioned to think this way. How did they all relate? All three of these articles explain how black Americans do not fit into white society and why and how that came to be. All three of these authors emphasize the fact that it is not surprising that blacks are still having problems integrating themselves into white society. The barriers are too great and too many for African American race to overcome on their own. Whites make them feel uncomfortable and unwelcomed into the luxuries and normalcy that whites call civil rights. All three of these articles were straightforward and clear about the points that the authors were trying to make. Changes need to be made in the norm of society and fixed for black Americans to have more freedom and mobility in society. These three authors found different ways to shed light on the topics of unfairness in society that does not have to do with outright racism. They speak about more of a taboo closet racism that people try to ignore and push under the rug so that we don't need to admit that racism still exists or so that we can deny that the existence of racism today.